materials that are helpful, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
And we're live on YouTube. So just confirm we have our interpreters ready. We have a Q&A function on the Zoom for folks that want to ask questions directly. This is ANC 5G, so if you're a senior citizen, feel free to use the raise your hand function. It will allow you to ask the question directly. But again, thank you, Commissioner Roblin, for introducing the meeting, starting the meeting, and all these lovely folks here today. Good turnout for this month's meeting. For those that don't know me, my name is Salvador Sauceda Guzman. I'm an ANC commissioner here in Trinidad. And today we have the wonderful AG here today. Hey, you're here.
That's a nice adjective. I don't always get called wonderful, but I'll take that.
You're doing hard work and we take what we can get. So we appreciate you here. We're being live streamed and we're on Zoom. We'll allow folks to ask questions. Commissioner Roblin has the mics for those ones. So whenever you do ask a question, we ask that you ask it in the mic so the folks on Zoom can hear y'all. We do have a large attendance on Zoom today. So just want to make sure that we're being fair to both sides, in person and virtually. So I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming out. And I'm going to try to truncate down some of my comments to leave some time for question and answer. Just a heads up that I do have to leave a little about 6:45 to get to an event. As everybody knows, it's October 7th, and it's amazing how fast the year goes by. And I'm sorry for having to be a little bit short. So let me kind of just shrink down what I'm going to talk about to leave time to talk about what's on your mind. Look, the Office of Attorney General has a very broad mission, and it's important for everybody in the district to know how important it is to have an elected Attorney General and to know what the office does. A lot of times I hear from people, they don't know what we do. Simple thing to remember is we basically have 3 buckets of work that we're responsible for, the 3 legs of the stool. One is to be the city's lawyers. So when the city needs a law firm to defend its interests, whether it's when the city gets sued, when the council or the mayor or the agencies need legal advice, if there's going to be a bond that's issued to generate revenue to do things, there are lawyers that are doing the legal business of the city. And there's a lot of work getting done every day in the AG's office, protecting taxpayer dollars, protecting the money of the city. Doesn't make the press, doesn't get a lot of attention, but really very, very important. The second bucket is what I'll call sort of how do we protect families and children. That's part of that is prosecution of juvenile crime. It's also the child abuse and neglect system and our child support enforcement. All of that work is being done by professionals in the Office of Attorney General. And I'm going to come back, talk about public safety and criminal prosecution in a minute. That's the second bucket. The third bucket is the statute requires me and my office to protect and defend the public interest. Public interest is not defined by the statute, but it has been generally come to known that that's protecting the environment, protecting workers, protecting tenants, enforcing our anti-discrimination laws, consumer protections, protecting seniors. And so we have a robust effort in the Office of Attorney General to try to protect the public interest. We have about 700 professionals who work in the Office of Attorney General, little less than 400 attorneys, and then we have paralegals and staff and investigators. Our work is organized around 4 pillars that I brought in as elected AG based on listening to residents of the District of Columbia, based on my transition team, and that's as follows. One is we organize our work around raising healthy, independent young people. That is our public safety strategy. It is a strategy that infuses a lot of what we do in all of our work. We believe that if young people grow up healthy and independent and hopeful, they will be safer to themselves and to people around them. Young people without hope are dangerous to themselves and people around them, just like anybody who lacks hope. So we are not looking at a public safety strategy purely as being the prosecutors who hold young people accountable. We do that, and we are seeing a lot of juvenile crime, more so last year than this year, but still we are holding young people accountable. But we think more broadly about what public safety and public health looks like from a perspective of supporting children and their families. The second is we're trying to make sure that the city of the District of Columbia, the community, shares the abundant resources we have in this city better than we do right now, because we have unbelievable resources in our city, whether they're measured by beautiful environmental resources, incredible cultural and historical resources, music and entertainment, museums. We have a $22 billion budget, which is an extraordinary thing for a community of 700,000 people. And we have incredible human talent in our city, people who are smart, who care about law, justice, policy, come to the District of Columbia. So we have all of those incredibly valuable resources here in the district. What we don't do well is share those resources across all of our wards and across all the people who live here. So we have huge discrepancies in who's getting a chance to take advantage of the opportunities that those resources create and who's getting left behind. So my office is focused on how do we use the law to narrow those gaps in what kind of resources are made available to people no matter where they live, which ward, which neighborhood. That's the second priority. The third priority is to stand up for democratic values, the values that are important to the residents of the District of Columbia. That certainly involves statehood, involves home rule, but also involves protecting the right to vote. It involves protecting the right to reproductive care for families and women. It involves standing up against discrimination in so many ways that we see our LGBTQ neighbors and others being impacted by things, sometimes here in the district, sometimes in other states. But we clearly know that we need friends here in the District of Columbia. We need to stand as a good friend to other states when they have laws or injustices going on there. So we do a lot of work, and certainly in anticipation of the election coming up very soon, there's been a lot of focus on what does it mean to fight for core democratic values for the district and for Americans. The fourth sort of priority of the office is inward, and that's that we are committed to being the best law firm in the country. Not best public interest law firm, we think the district residents deserve the very best law firm fighting for them. And so in our recruiting, our training, our systems, our HR, our technology, all of that is something that we aspire to get better at every day. We want to be an agency that is responsive, that is listening, that is not only hearing things, but being able to respond in real time. I think DC residents deserve responsiveness, even if they don't have an answer that they want to hear. They ought to hear from their government. And so that's how we think about prioritizing what we do every day at the Office of Attorney General. On the public safety front, because that's always a very important thing on people's minds, and we know that when people don't feel safe, we don't get to the other things we need to do as a city. Public safety is the number one priority in the office, and we think about it in lots of different ways. All of you probably know this. You come to ANC meetings, you're active as a commissioner, as a civic member of our community, you know this, but I need help letting your neighbors and your family know this. We have a bifurcated criminal justice system in DC because we are not a state, which means that the jurisdiction of the Attorney General's office, your elected Attorney General, is to prosecute juvenile crime. That's defined as people younger than 18, and a very small number of adult misdemeanors. The vast majority of crime in our city is committed by people 18 and over, and that is, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor, it is charged by the federally appointed U.S. attorney. U.S. attorney that's selected by the president, not elected by the people of the District of Columbia, and can depend on who the president is in terms of who gets selected to be in that role. Right now, Matt Graves is the U.S. attorney. Matt lives in the district. He has raised his family here. He cares about the district, and he's been a very good partner. But at the end of the day, his boss is not all of you and your colleagues who live in the District of Columbia. That's why it was so important to have an elected attorney general, because there's nothing more core to community values than how we execute on our criminal laws. What is criminalized? How do we enforce those laws? And right now, because we lack statehood and we have a home rule constraint on us, my office, your elected prosecutor, has a limited jurisdiction. When it comes to juvenile crime, we have seen, disturbingly, particularly last year, younger and younger kids showing up in the criminal justice system. It used to be that not so many years ago, the first offense for a young person would be a relatively low-level offense, maybe a shoplifting, maybe an assault. Now we're seeing earlier offenses show up with violent crime, carjacking, gun cases, younger and younger, and kids younger and younger having access to guns. And so it used to be that maybe you had a series of offenses before you might be a trigger puller. We're seeing younger offenses. So we have to respond to that, and we are. And as a result, the lawyers in my office are prosecuting more and more serious crimes. The number of kids that are being committed to DYRS for serious crimes has gone up, so much so that we've had capacity issues, and maybe some of you are following some of the legislation that I've been advocating for to make sure that when we do have kids in the deep end of the criminal justice system and we're holding them accountable, we're also holding our city accountable to make sure that DYRS gets these young people the services and support they need. Because they're coming back to society. The most you're going to get locked up as a juvenile is juvenile life, and that's 21. So we know that when we have kids in the deep end who've done very serious crime and have hurt people, we have to engage with them to try to make sure we get them back on track. We are doing everything we can to address guns in our city. We are not diverting or taking a pass on gun possession cases, even if they are not guns being used in the commission of a crime. Possession cases we are taking seriously. We are defending our gun laws. Our gun laws are under attack every day under the Second Amendment, given some Supreme Court precedent. The lawyers in my office are going to court to try to defend reasonable gun laws. Like, why do you need a gun to go to a church or a library and be on the metro with a gun? And so we're trying to defend the laws we have. We have red flag laws. They're called our ERPO laws, extreme risk protective orders. That's to try to make sure that people who lawfully own a gun, who maybe are unsafe to themselves, maybe having a mental health or other type of issue, who shouldn't have those guns, the system can take those guns away from them. We have lawyers and professionals in our office that are prosecuting those red flag law cases. I have worked in every way I can from a civil perspective to keep guns out of our city. You may have seen a couple of weeks ago, I, along with the Attorney General from Maryland, sued 3 gun dealers in Maryland for straw sales of guns to people who we allege were obviously straw purchasers of Glocks and handguns. They weren't collectors. They were looking to buy guns in Maryland and sell them. 95% of the guns that are in our district come from outside the district. We don't have gun manufacturers in the city. Many of those guns are straw sales. They're the illegal secondary market for guns, and we are awash in guns in our cities. We have to do everything we can to try to address guns, and we will continue to try to do that. We have a commitment to violence interruption, to recognizing that we have to take an all hands on deck. Violence interruption has become somewhat controversial recently. It's been politicized. I'm very proud of the work that the Attorney General's practice of Cure the Streets, the 10 sites we have in the city, the commitment we have to the professionalism of grant making and of holding our grantees accountable. But the work that's being done by violence interrupters across the city is critically important part of how we have a public safety strategy. It's not in lieu of courts and police and prosecution, it's in conjunction with. And oftentimes when our violence interrupters can disrupt cycles of violence, we know a lot of gun violence is retaliatory in nature. Time is of the essence. We need to diffuse. We need to stop cycles of violence from happening, try to mediate, and oftentimes then get people the services and support they need. So we are taking an all hands on deck approach because the problem of public safety requires that, requires a comprehensive approach. We will partner with anybody who's willing in good faith to engage. I've made it clear that I'm not interested in pointing fingers. I'm not interested in casting blame. I'm interested in results. And that's what we've tried to focus on. So I think that's a good overview. I'm happy to talk a little bit about specific cases that we're engaged in, some of the priorities, but hopefully that gives everybody a good overview of what we're doing, and we can open it up to some questions. So in the little less than a half hour I've got, I can be responsive to what's on your mind rather than me talking at you.
To bring it home here, I guess one first question we can kick off to allow folks to really get into the weeds of the conversation. What is the work that you see at the neighborhood level? What impact do you see your office doing specifically in neighborhoods directly? We live here in Trinidad. It's one of the largest neighborhoods in Northeast. We're blessed to have violence interrupters in our area. But what do you say is really coming close to home for us when it comes to your office's work?
Well, we want to be in regular and real-time communication with neighborhoods. So our relationship with ANC commissioners is very important. We have, I think, a very constructive relationship with not only ANC commissioners, but the office of ANC. Want to be a support to the commissioners who, as you know, it's a volunteer job. Sometimes it's in addition to the second or third or fourth jobs that commissioners are holding down. And you have ears to the ground on things that are in real time really important to residents. My commitment to community engagement, I've invested in building out our community engagement team. I have an extraordinary group of community engagement professionals. If you haven't met Juan Ulloa is here with me tonight, but Juan is part of my team. Aaron Jenkins is the director of community engagement. We have a team that wants to be in real-time listening. So we come to meetings. We are always available to meetings if we get invited, if we can be here. My team comes to meetings even if I can't, so they can listen and hear what's happening. We also have a variety of portals into the office that are important. So we have hotlines for worker protection. If people know of somebody in their family that's being ripped off by the employer, being misclassified as an independent contractor when they're employee, not getting sick leave or family leave, we have a hotline and we want to hear from people in real time. Same thing with consumer protection. Same thing with discrimination and civil rights issues. We want to hear from people. And I think one of the things for commissioners to know is we're available. You should know how easy it is to be in touch with us. And I hold my team accountable. I expect my team to get back in touch with you within 24 hours, even if it's to say, we got it, we're looking into it, we don't have an answer yet. That's what a first-class government should do for people. We're working for you. And so when people have questions or concerns, I want to be responsive. Sometimes, candidly, I can get a great idea from an ANC commissioner or from a community member that it may take months to wend its way through the agency to ultimately come back to my office to do something about it. And we want to shorten that up. There are also times where we can give people information, even though the answer may not be what people want to hear, but at least to be able to tell them what the rules are, what the law is. So, I saw that somebody wrote in, maybe we'll talk a little bit about Ivy City and the some of the environmental issues that are going on. I'm very acutely aware of some of the environmental justice issues that impact Ward 5 in particular, given the history of the ward, given the zoning of the ward. Sometimes an answer is not going to be satisfactory if somebody's saying, we want you to shut down this business yesterday. And I may have to say, my team might have to say, here's where we are with the process. Here's where we are with EPA. Here's with the overall agency, Department of Energy and Environment, what's happening. And even though the answer may not be immediately satisfactory, at least it's sharing information as to the way the system's working. And I think that's important for us to do.
Thank you. So we have a question over here. You want to pass the mic on us?
I got a loud voice. I can just ask loudly. And I asked one, but my name's Dan Ripple, my wife, Jessica Ripple.
Thank you.
So we bike here just now. My kids every morning ask if they can bike to school, and every morning I say, no, sorry, it's too dangerous, because statistically, you've talked a lot about violence. People rightly are worried about violence, but the thing that most worries me is my kids getting hit by a car, most likely a Maryland driver, because Maryland drivers know that there is no accountability, no recourse right now for them. So fortunately, we had the STEER Act passed recently, and I'm excited to hear what your office is doing to implement that law. I think it took effect last week.
Yeah, great question. Traffic violence is a huge impact, huge quality of life issue. And so we are looking, and part of the STEER Act gives us some authority we didn't have beforehand. We're now hiring into some of the resources that the council allowed us to hire extra professionals to be able to prosecute some of the cases we now have authority to do. We have limited criminal prosecutorial authority, but we are the office that prosecutes a lot of the drunk driving and the reckless driving that results in serious accidents in the city. That's after the fact. We also now will have the authority to go after scofflaws, those that have racked up large amounts of tickets, many of whom live in Maryland and Virginia. I have the authority now to go after them. We know who they are, we know the information, and what it will be is a process of bringing lawsuits first in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia to get a judgment against them, and then enrolling that judgment in Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, wherever they are, and going to collect that judgment against them. It is going to be an expensive and arduous process to begin with, because we're going to get fought at every side about whether or not we can do this and whether our law will uphold itself. But what I'm hoping is we're going to go after some big time scofflaws. We're going to make it known that you cannot speed through our city without consequence. And hopefully that's going to start to change some of the behavior. To the extent there's an impression that if you live in Maryland or Virginia, or you have Maryland and Virginia tags, you can ignore our laws, we're going to try to tackle that by saying no more. Can you do that? It's a good partnership with the council. Charles Allen led the way and other council members on the STEER Act. Now our office, when we have the resources in place, are going to try to implement that law and try to change behavior through some high impact advocacy. And next time we get together, I hope I'll be able to report to you as to where we're doing it. I would say that my hope is that we're going to be able to deliver results. It's going to take some time just because of the judicial process. We got to go to Superior Court first, get the judgment, then go to Virginia or Maryland, enroll the judgment, and start collecting on people's assets, whether it's their homes, their cars, whatever it is to collect. We got some people who got $40,000, $50,000 of unpaid tickets. I think the number when the STEER Act was passed, millions of dollars of unpaid tickets. And so it'll be a fiscal benefit to our city, but hopefully it'll also be changing the behavior of people who think they can speed through without consequence.
I know it's a two-way street, but any progress that could be made on reciprocity with Maryland and Virginia for automated camera violations?
Well, absolutely. We need, and that's a statehood issue. It's, we need, candidly, what's going to help it is we need our clean hands laws to work with the clean hands laws in Maryland, Virginia. If you go to renew your license in Maryland and they say, oh, you got a DC ticket, you can't renew your license until you pay DC. That's how we're ultimately going to get it done. And this is just for the benefit of the audience on how many ways our lives are impacted by not being a state. How many ways the day-to-day safety of residents in the District of Columbia are impacted. This is just a great example. Maryland doesn't have to worry about Virginians, streaming through their jurisdiction because there's a relationship between Maryland and Virginia to have parking tickets enforced. And we need to get to that place.
We have to get the next question. The time is short.
I have a question. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to connect with us. My name is Carrie Carter. I'm a resident here in Montello, in Trinidad area. And I'm also a write-in candidate for ANC. So I'm very passionate about the neighborhood. But one of the things as I've connected with neighbors and I'm speaking to them is, did say you were going to cover a little bit more about public safety. So what is your plans around that for specifically for certain neighborhoods that have high crime issues? I know like they did the drug-free zones. Cameras are being placed in different areas that have high crime. But what are your plans exactly to kind of dig in a little bit deeper within for public safety issues? And the second question is, as far as the resources, I do think that is a missing piece of connecting residents with resources and what is available for us. So what is your plans around that in a little bit more detail? And also what is your time?
Okay. So, my view as the Attorney General charged with enforcing the law is to take a comprehensive view. What tools do I have to try to address public safety? Certainly one part of public safety is crime. And so how do we reduce crime? Part of it is effective prosecution of crimes when the cases are brought to us by MPD. For the most serious crimes that we prosecute, serious juvenile crimes, whether they be gun crimes, carjacking, we're talking about a relatively small number of crimes in the relationship to all crime. Juvenile crime gets a lot of attention. Juvenile crime leads the news when it happens, but the fact of the matter is that it's a very small percentage of overall crime that is prosecuted by my office. The crimes that we get to prosecute, we prosecute aggressively. We work with MPD, we work with our other partners in Montgomery County, Prince George's County to try to bring good cases. Effective deterrence really depends on swift and certain consequences. So we want to make sure that when a crime occurs, they're solved and the crimes can be prosecuted relatively quickly. Some of that is outside of our control because it's MPD needs to make an arrest, MPD needs to bring us the evidence that we can use to prosecute, and then we do that. The time period that we have in prosecution is very small relative to the time period both on the front end or the back end. So that's where I've also tried to lean in. On the back end, I've been shining a light on what are we doing with kids in the deep end at DYRS to make sure that we try to bring down the recidivism rates, that we try to make sure that we reduce crime because when children come home, they won't commit crimes again if we've done a better job. That's a public safety strategy to reduce crime We also know, candidly, there are very few, if any, young people that come to my office charged by MPD with a crime that have not been failed repeatedly by the system at a variety of stages along the way, whether that's the education system, the health system, the housing system. That's where the public advocacy work that the office is doing is also trying to address root causes. We bring aggressively housing instability cases against slumlords, against landlords that are not providing safe, habitable housing, because we know the vast majority of cases involve that element for a young person who doesn't have a safe place to live. We know that a lot of young people have become disconnected to safety factors in their lives. So both through grant making, through other programs we have, through shining a light on when young people are doing great things, we're trying to infuse that we're getting kids back connected to healthy, hopeful role models. I like this statistic because it's true, and it also shows something. We have 50,000 young people roughly in our city between ages 10 and 17. We've got 500 or so that are in the criminal justice system. It's 1%. 99% of the young people in our city are doing great things, oftentimes against really tough odds. We don't talk about that enough. We need to create a positive place for young people to grow up safely. That's part of what we're trying to do. The violence interruption work is part of the public safety strategy. The gun cases that we're bringing to keep guns off the street is part of the public safety strategy. The grant making that we do to community organizations that are doing the work on the ground is part of the safety strategy. And if there are other ideas of things that we can do, I'm open to it. Always open to good ideas. At a minimum, I have a bully pulpit as the AG. I can shine a light on things that I think are important. I can also convene. Recently, I convened a meeting in Ward 7 along the Minnesota Avenue corridor of businesses that were struggling with public safety issues. I may not have the ability to do anything directly about it, but at a minimum, I can bring people together. I can bring agencies together and say, what are we going to do collectively to try to solve this issue? So it's an everything is on the table for me approach to dealing with public safety. I wish I could tell people that I'm going to snap a finger and things are going to get better right away. These are generational challenges we've got. We've got generational trauma, generational neglect, generational systemic racism that infects what we're dealing with. And any public servant that gets up there and tells you I can fix this, or they're going to tell you, here's how I'm going to fix it, I just need more police and more prisons and I'll get it fixed, is not dealing honestly with the complexity of the problems. People and prosecutors have, police and prosecutors have a very important role to play. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me on that. There is deterrence and accountability that happens through the prosecutorial process, and we do that. But there's so much more too that we have to do.
And are you like considering more job training programs, or like when the youth and children who are lost, they don't necessarily have these, like trying to get another job and trying to get out of the streets? Are you implementing more programs for kids like that, for like job training or helping with interviews and connecting them with a job that, stuff like that?
Yeah,
because
so
I know once you have a record, it's very different.
Wherever I can be involved directly in that, I am. We're not a human services organization. Right. We're a law enforcement agency. Mm-hmm. But for example, I have a high school advisory council. I have a summer program. We pay young people who are going to work during the summer and work throughout the year, working in the Office of Attorney General, developing policy, which I listen to, because a lot of the problems that we're confronting, old people like me got to listen to young people who have answers to things. And so where we can put people to work, where we can start to show somebody, young man or a woman, you ever think about being a lawyer? You're pretty persuasive. You like to argue. You're smart. Anybody ever tell you might be a great lawyer one day? Why don't you come work in the Office of Attorney General? Huge impact on people's mindset when we can do it. I don't have the resources to be a human services agency, but we can model, we can demonstrate what works and try to connect to the other agencies in the city that do have summer youth programming, whether it's Department of Parks and Rec, schools, and others, to bring people together. Great question.
I want to tap in the violence interrupters, because they actually do a lot of the programming that Ms. Carter was asking about. Did someone want to speak on that? You guys had, I've been out literally out on the streets of Montello, like getting folks job interviews on spot with the violence interrupters. Yeah, and this one so they can hear them on too. I think this one goes.
Yeah.
How y'all doing? I'm Cody Wynn. So definitely, our Curtis Street, North Curtis Street program, we service the Trinidad / 18th M Arena area. And in this area, we got a team of 10. So which that team of 10 come 5 violent interrupters and 3 OWs, which means our outreach workers. Every day, our outreach workers go out into the community and they recognize individuals, high-risk individuals, and potential participants, high-risk individuals to come into our Curtis Street program. They come into our database and they also ask and get the service that they need. If it's job training, job placement, programming, and things like that, we try to meet them needs and go out and get the resources that they need on a daily basis. Our program is data driven. So every day, whoever they come in contact, whoever they talk to goes into the database of our Curtis Street's database, what they got to put in. So I know that when they do sign up for our program, our outreach workers get a caseload. So it's meaning that at least 3 times out the week, they come into contact with them individuals to make sure they're getting the resources that they need, far as if they getting job placement, job training, program, housing. We try to partner with a lot of organizations. We partner with the mayor's office, the ANC commissioners, storefronts, schools, and everything to try to get them the resources that they need. Our workers work every day from Monday to Saturday, every day. They out in the community. A lot of y'all, we see a lot of y'all in the community. We don't walk with a lot of y'all in the community. Our office is on 1109 Mount Oliver Road. The door is always open for any returned citizen, any high-risk individual, and any individual that need our resources.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you very, very much.
Any other one from Cure the Streets want to say anything?
How y'all doing? Bill McFadden, Director of Operations. Just want to echo what Brother Cody stated. We have to do a community event, participant event every month. When you look at this work of violence prevention and intervention, the VIs and OWs spend more time with the high-risk individuals than anybody. There's no government agency that or organization spends this much time with these individuals. But you know that changing group norms and dynamics means that we have to connect them to resources and supports to meet the fundamental needs. You can have all the conversations you want with me, but if there's no food in the refrigerator, grandma don't have medicine, and the lights off, and I'm couch surfing, I really can't hear anything that you attempt to pour into me. So I've been doing this work for a while. I don't know if there's anyone in here who recalls Weed and Seed back in them days. Ooh, no, nobody. Ooh, wow. What about Project Safe Neighborhood? Project Safe Neighborhood, federal government. Basically, it was financial support from the federal government to do violence prevention and intervention for youth. And also when the late Councilmember Jim Grant was here, I was part of the gang prevention, GIP model, Gang Intervention Partnership, in the Coordinating Council on Youth Violence Prevention and Intervention, work with every organization, Peaceaholics, Alliance Concerned Men, Ceasefire Don't Smoke the Brothers. So I know that this work is very important. And with the issues that's taking place today, I really commend Cody and his team, OWs and VIs, because it's not just crew on crew. That's when they talk about the old models, we looked at this neighborhood feuding with that neighborhood, but today it's any situation that may take place. The AG just stated 13, 14-year-olds are packing heat now. So it's very difficult to prognosticate, predict where the next issue may happen. But I do know, as far as my team here in Trinidad, talking and meeting with those who are part of the social media piece, addressing those issues, addressing individuals that involve victims and aggressors, and really trying to support them and be consistent and don't make promises that we can't keep, because that's how you lose trust. And so our goal is really create a license to operate, and that's through standing relationships and us doing exactly what we say we're going to do. And the one request that I do have is we do need further partnerships with resources, job training, not just job training, job placement for those who are worthy, right? but we have to understand, a lot of them do have a record. And so we have to broker relationships with those agencies or organizations that provide workforce development, job placement for this specific population.
Thank you. So we'll ask the final questions for folks that have been waiting on the Zoom, just to clarify, maybe just to understand your office a little bit. Mary Ellison's asking, does your office have jurisdiction over the car break-ins happening lately in our ward? Do you have thoughts on how to deter this type of crime?
Yes, so again, if a car break-in is committed by somebody younger than 18, a juvenile crime, that crime will be prosecuted by our office. Typically what will happen is MPD will make an arrest. They will bring to us the evidence that links a particular young person to a series of crimes. The attorneys in my office screen that and prosecute those cases. We have seen this year a marked decline in the number of carjackings and car thefts in the city. We've seen a marked decline in the number of gun shootings and homicides, but there's still too many. One is too many. These are very much impactful crimes. We sometimes don't talk about the economic impact and the personal impact on people when cars are stolen. They're not just property crimes. They are victims that are deeply impacted by that. And so we know that they're serious and we treat them seriously. We, of course, can't prosecute cases that we don't have evidence to prosecute. We never would prosecute cases if we don't think we have enough evidence to meet our burden of proof. And part of that is a reach to the community to know that we need community participation. If witnesses see things, we need them to say something. We need them to come forward. We need to create a feeling of safety that they're going to be taken care of. We have victim support professionals in the office. We want to try to help link up people to the compensation funds that are available under certain crime funds that are available in the city and federally. So we try to do our best to address the needs of victims because we know that we can't prosecute crimes effectively if victims don't report. And we also have to recognize what is it that's leading people to steal cars and carjack and do other things and try to get at those root causes as well.
Expire and you have term limits. Are you subject to term limits?
So in the District of Columbia, there are no term limits. So I'm not subject to a term limit. I don't think any elected official in our city is. I was elected a little more than 2 years ago, sworn in January of 23. So my term will end at the end of 2026. I'm just about halfway through my first term in office.
You mentioned compensation funds for people who are a victim of crime. Would you mind speaking a little bit more about what those programs are, what's available for people?
Yeah, and I will say that there's a lot of material both on our website as well as with certain organizations that focus on advocating for victims of crime. But both the federal government and local DC government have set up funds to support crime victims. Sometimes it's, for example, if a loved one has been killed, with funeral expenses and dealing with how do we help somebody have a funeral with dignity when there may not be resources available. Sometimes it's resources to deal with financial loss. This is the hardest part of crime victim support because while we help with funeral expenses and other things, I'll give you an anecdote. I spoke with a woman who really had a beautiful wardrobe for church, including her hat for church every day. And she spent $300 or $400 on her church hat. When her car was stolen, the hat in the back seat was stolen too. And she wanted to know who's going to help me. I can't go to church without a hat and my hat is gone. And it was extremely frustrating for me to see that our bureaucracy sometimes doesn't deal with the loss of a thing as opposed to some of the other victim support. So the system is not perfect, but there are resources. There are professionals that can help people navigate those resources. And again, if you're a victim of a crime and you have questions, we want to hear from you. Even if it's not a crime that we may be prosecuting, we and the people in our public safety division can at least direct you to the resources that may be responsive to the need. So I'm sorry, I got to go. We have some written material. I've got Juan has some copies of our impact report if you're interested in it. I promise that sometime when I don't have a time constraint, I'll come back. But I hope I was responsive to the questions, and I appreciate an active civic engagement. That, at the end of the day, is really what's critical in terms of how we get to where we deserve to be as a city. Government has an important role to play, but government cannot do it without partnership with people in community. And whether it's ANC commissioners or community organizations or just neighbors who want to be active and engaged and smart, that's really important. And so I thank you all for making some time on a Monday night to come and listen to me. All right.
camera rebate program?
They can hear you.
Oh, they can, okay, great. Yeah, hey, everybody, we're gonna do, MPD will be here around 7-ish. And, you know, the Attorney General was supposed to stay until 7, but he ended up having to leave early because it's the anniversary of October 7th. So, we didn't find that out until the last minute, so, but MPD will be here around 7-ish. And they'll be talking about the camera rebate program until 7:30-ish. So don't leave us. Thank you so much. Yeah, they should be here soon.
The culture is like, what is the culture like? It's, how do I describe it? It's just,
I never think it's to explain things because I'm so nervous.
it really is.
You shouldn't be.
Yeah,
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
Public speaking?
I'm never comfortable with it. So,
I get it.
I'm always nervous with anything like that.
Hmm. You've gotten good at it. You're pretty good at it when you need to state something.
Not really. Sometimes I manage, but lots of times I
Is,
don't.
but on the Zoom, you seem very confident in everything you say. Is it just because you're in a private setting, but still open?
It helps. But, yeah, I don't remember things.
I like you to open up these meetings because they're your baby. So, and that's also
It can be both.
right. But it's
It's a shared
trying to
effort.
get you out of your comfort zone to feel comfortable in those settings. I've done it all the time, so I'm not really that nervous. But like,
Yeah,
it's
you're
just
really good at it.
it's just to break you out of that.
You
So
don't
you have,
forget anything.
but it's always
It
because
does help me learn.
yeah, because I've always been thrown in those situations, so that's how I learn. So not that I want to throw you in anything, but it's like,
Yeah, it does help you learn. And then you learn from your mistakes because there were so many things I forget. Like I forgot to introduce myself when I first introduced the Attorney General. I totally forgot to introduce myself. Forget, and then you introduced me, which I appreciate it. So I, you know.
who was the young gentleman that was here earlier with the glasses?
and I think the big thing
His name is Charles. He attends our public meetings, and then he ran into, I was at work, and I did food stamps. He was me there, and he was like, "Oh, you're they."
Uh-huh.
And then I added him to the newsletter.
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice. Was he not getting the 5D newsletter? Or he was?
I don't know, but I don't think we ever advertised this newsletter in the 5D mailings, and we really should be doing that.
I thought you already did that with Andy. You didn't do that?
Well, just today or something, or yesterday, but.
Okay, but just now, but it's good
We
now.
never in the whole 2 years, I don't think we ever did that.
No.
But now it's good.
Talk about it, it's like,
Well, now we put it in there,
Okay, good.
but nobody responded anyway, so.
I mean, no one ever responds really. I've never seen anyone respond to any of our emails, like directly from the email.
They're listening to everything.
Yeah, I mean,
Recording. So what did you think about the
Okay, so we're here back online for today's meeting. We have here Sergeant Kelly from the 5th District Metropolitan Police Department, and going to talk about the camera rebate program. So go ahead, Sergeant.
My understanding, the camera rebate program, it basically allows for DC residents who own their home, they can go through the program with the city. The city will reimburse the purchasing of cameras. The cameras are then able to be set up at your house or your residence or business, depending. And in reference to if there is a crime in the area, if you're opted into the program, MPD would be able to contact you and ask if you could view the cameras. And then any pertaining footage to whatever the incident was would then basically be able to be sent to the detectives for them to basically investigate and hopefully close the case or whatever the incident is. Additionally, if you are a business owner and opt into the camera program, there is part of it where you can give live access to MPD from your business. So in the case of a number of the businesses that have people hanging out unwanted on the sides, drinking, smoking, or doing other nefarious things, someone usually either at the Violent Crime Suppression Division or the crime suppression teams in the districts would be able to view the footage in real time. So if they were to see something like a narcotics transaction, they would be able to respond over as it's occurring with the suspect already known and then address it that way.
Do you have someone who's looking at the cameras like 24/7, or do you have like a certain shift, or how?
The mayor, excuse me, not the mayor, the chief and the mayor, to my understanding, they started recently within the past year and a half, the Real-Time Crime Center. It operates out of essentially our headquarters. They view camera footage as it comes in. It would be impossible basically to view all camera footage 24/7, however. So it's more as an event takes place, they access which cameras they have at that point, and then they can play back and try to see what occurred at that location. They do monitor, as I said, if it's a known problem area, there can be monitoring more frequently or as people are there. But again, there's only so many officers essentially to both monitor and then actually go take action for the event. So like in the case of the crime suppression team, if they have access to cameras, they will watch, see something, but then most of them will have to actually go address it themselves. So there just isn't the manpower really for someone to watch 24/7. The closest is the Real-Time Crime Center, who do monitor cameras throughout the city, but it's very dependent. So if a homicide occurs on the other side of the city, most of their attention is going to be over there for that time, and they won't be able to view the other cameras at that time.
So just to clarify, monitoring is only activated when an event occurs.
For them going back, for the people that are able to watch in real time, yes, as the event occurs.
Got it.
So as far as like the business owners, I just a little bit away from the cameras, but outside of the cameras, what rights do they have? There's some type of consistent crime activity happening within their establishment. Like, what rights do they have to
within the establishment itself?
Or like not within it, but on the exterior, like right.
So DC doesn't have a loitering law. It has, it does have charges for certain actions like contains alcohol, public consumption of marijuana. Those are crimes within the district. Those can be addressed as a cop goes through. But essentially, there's only so much we can ask them to move from the passageway, and there's procedures to do it. But we can't essentially just go and clear the block automatically because they are there. If we see a crime, that's another thing. Then it goes into the officer's particular discretion of if they're going to actually make a custodial arrest for it, or if they're going to advise them, address it that way, send them on way, and then if it continues, then make an arrest later. But that's kind of up to the individual officer that goes to the scene of how they're going to handle through their discretion.
So going back to the cameras, can you speak on how this program operates for condo buildings?
My understanding, if the condo itself is owned by the person and not by an organization, they should be able to go up on the building. They would probably just have to focus more on the condo's property itself and not really focus in on a neighbor or anything of that nature.
Okay. I guess touching on the condos aspect, have you or other officers had to go into condo buildings to pull footage from any of those sites? Any experiences here in the 5th District?
Not specifically. My only experience is with, depending on the scene I'm on, if someone gives us access to the cameras at that time, we'll go try to look at them while we're there.
Mhm.
But that's, for my level, that's just on the consent of either the owner, the property owner, the resident, or the business.
And for any of these cameras that are installed and that MPD has access to, what's the process of getting footage pulled in general? What does that process look like from a resident standpoint?
I'm not too sure for how they would go about it. And again, the ones where we have direct access to would be the businesses. It wouldn't be the private residences. Normally, it's a detective would go by, usually with a USB, to download the appropriate footage with the assistance of the owner.
Okay. And all these cameras, you're saying you can go on site, pull the footage directly from the devices, but what about the stationary mobile units that you have that are throughout the neighborhood? How do you pull that footage?
The ones for the department?
Mhm.
That's all through the real-time crime center that they have access to. And again, I'm not a computer guy by any stretch. So.
Yeah, but in terms of, it looks like you're able to pull that footage from that center, even if the camera is not, wired, it could be mobile, and the real-time crime center can still pull that footage as well.
If they have access to, yes, they can pull the footage.
Got it. I just want to make sure we have the right program. Yep. So for those that dropped the link in the Zoom, that is the correct private security rebate program that was shared, which is through the Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants. Any other questions? These are all the questions we have on the Zoom. Oh, wait 1 second. Sorry. Oh, gosh. Sorry, I got one more. This resident says, I've had camera footage to share on a crime in front of my house, but officers wouldn't use it. Will this benefit homeowners with crimes on their property? Do you know of any instances, Sergeant, where we're not allowed to pull footage?
Again, depending on what it shows or whose property it would essentially show would be my only assumption as to why, or depending on if it was actually needed by the detectives or not.
And when you say property that shows, what do you mean by that?
Again, if the camera is pointed at like an area, like showing someone else's private property where they would have the expectation of privacy.
Got it.
It would then essentially require a warrant as opposed to just the plain view of the camera. If the camera is on your property, shows only your property, or shows like a public area like a street or an alley, that would just be fair game for us if something occurs there. But depending on where, if it focuses in, it goes into someone's expectation of privacy.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. Any other questions for Sergeant Kelly? I'm bringing up some good ones. I think that's all we have for you today, Sergeant. Anything else for you to share with us? How's the new commander?
He's settling in. A lot of people seem to be very excited about him. He has a lot of experience. He's coming up with his plans for the 5th District. Commander Altieri is pretty much still around as well because he moved up to Patrol Service North. So now he's just overall in charge of 5D, 3D, 4D, and 2D. But he's still, 5D is still within his purview as well. So he's still going to be involved within the 5th District. That's about as far as that.
Sounds good.
Anything else going on or anything?
Typical this time of the year, it is essentially our robbery season. As the weather cools off, gets closer into winter, the thicker jackets come out, which can conceal weapons, things like that. And more common that someone might wear a ski mask. And with also it being coming up to the holiday season, where people are purchasing more items, having more cash on hand as they go about their business, the robberies do tend to increase this time of year throughout the city. in reference to that. So that's just generally what we now kind of start to focus on as we go into this time of the year. The Thrive Zone is still in place, which is down the road on Bladensburg Road 17, Bladensburg Road to 15 to 17 encompasses Starburst Plaza, Heckinger Mall, the Pinnacle Apartments, that area. So we still have a large focus over on that area, trying to deter crime and get the crime back down over there.
Are you in 507?
I'm usually in
Got
507.
it.
Well, I might be switching to 502 in a couple weeks.
Oh, okay. Well,
I've been in 507 for the last year, and
Okay.
subsequently kind of this side as well, as
Mhm.
506 is part of Sector 3, which
Mhm.
has been my sector for the past year and a half.
got it. Well, we appreciate your work in 507. We know it's not easy out there, just like 506. So maybe 502 will give you a break a little bit.
I didn't ask for it.
Well, every officer deserves it every now and then gets back in the ring. But looks like that's it for you today, Sergeant. We appreciate you joining us tonight and answering some of our questions. And who would be the best point of contact to reach out if there's anything additional?
The community outreach at 5th District is probably always the best first line you can contact with most of the answers.
Is that Officer Hamilton or is that someone else?
There's Hamilton, and then I know Sergeant Fulcher in the admin section is also
Okay.
heavily involved.
Is that who they reach out to for if they are interested in their cameras or giving you the private access to their cameras?
That would be part of it. You can talk to them about it. A lot of it is just through the Office of Victim Services. Because again, I know part of it is essentially goes in and they'll send out an alert of if you're signed up or part of the program, you have the camera. There's part of it is you'll get an alert that an event occurred and ask people to check the cameras. And then you'd be able to, they would reach out to you essentially that way to see if you did get anything and then coordinate basically getting the data if there is anything pertinent.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Sergeant. Thank you for joining us. And thanks for the information.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, that's tonight's meeting. Please join us tomorrow for our monthly ANC public meeting. We got a couple of things popping up. And since we're on the topic of Trinidad, we have a resolution for safe passage that we'll be working on. So feel free to join the meeting so you can bring in some questions or bring in some information for that resolution specifically. Y'all have